It didn't feel like a regular night at Chase Center, and you could sense that early. There was that tension in the building, the kind that only shows up when the Warriors know they're running out of time to figure things out. Golden State made a real push late, the kind of run we've seen so many times over the years, but this one didn't land the same way. They came up short against Houston, and the final sequence is going to stay with fans for a while. Steph Curry finished with 29, and you could tell he was trying to find that rhythm again after missing time with that runner's knee. The minutes were limited, just 26 on the floor. But even in that window, he still looked like the one guy who could tilt everything. The problem is, Houston knew it too. Every touch, every movement, they were locked in on him. When the game came down to that last shot with a couple seconds left, it wasn't a clean look. It was forced, contested, and it just didn't fall. Right, always with Curry, if you believe he can still lead the Warriors to another great season. And here's where things get real. This wasn't just about one missed shot. The Warriors had trouble all night dealing with Houston's front court presence. Kevin Durant controlled the pace with 31, adding 8 boards and 8 assists, just picking his spots like a veteran who knows exactly when to hurt you. Alperen Sengun added 24, including that go-ahead bucket in the final seconds that basically flipped the script. Golden State didn't have a consistent answer inside, and that showed up in key stretches. There's also something else that stood out if you were really watching closely. The offensive execution late in the game didn't give Curry much help. When defenses collapse like that, you need a second option that can punish the rotation, and Golden State just didn't have a clean counter. The action broke down, the spacing tightened, and it turned into a tough, predictable look. That's not where you want to be in that moment. Comment, the Bay still believes if you trust that Golden State can rise again. Now here's the twist that makes this whole situation interesting. Even with the loss, there's still a sense inside the organization that this isn't over. Curry may not be at full strength yet, but in a strange way, he's fresher than most players at this stage of the season. That matters more than people think, especially heading into a play-in scenario where one game can flip everything. If his minutes start climbing over these next few games, that changes the entire ceiling of this team. The Warriors are sitting in a spot where they'll likely have to fight through the play-in, and that path is not easy. You're potentially looking at matchups against teams like the Clippers or even Portland, and then another elimination game right after. There's no room for error, no time to experiment. Every possession starts to feel heavier, every decision matters more. If you're part of Warriors Nation and you want to follow every chapter of this team's journey, subscribe now. And there's another layer here that hasn't fully clicked yet. The chemistry in that front court rotation still feels unfinished. The connection between Curry and Porzingis hasn't been fully unlocked, and you can see it in moments where the timing is just slightly off. The pick-and-pop sets that should create clean looks haven't been consistent, and that's something Steve Kerr is going to have to address quickly. Right? Never count out the Warriors if you know this team always finds a way to compete. Because if that connection starts working, even just at a decent level, this team suddenly becomes a lot harder to guard. Right now, defenses are comfortable loading up on Steph, but give him a reliable release valve, someone who can stretch the floor and punish switches, and the whole dynamic shifts. That's the difference between a team that survives the play-in and one that actually becomes dangerous after it. And here's the part that a lot of people around the league are quietly watching. The Warriors don't need to be perfect. They just need to be functional at the right time. With Steph on the floor, even at less than 100%, there's always that feeling that something can happen. But if the supporting pieces don't fall into place soon, that window gets tighter with every game. Stay close, because what happens in the next matchup against Sacramento might tell us everything about where this team is really heading. Sacramento isn't just another game on the schedule. It's a measuring stick for where this group really stands right now. The Kings play fast, they space the floor, and they force you to defend every possession with discipline. If Golden State shows the same defensive gaps we saw against Houston, especially protecting the paint and handling secondary actions, it could get uncomfortable quick. But if they tighten those rotations and communicate better, this is exactly the kind of matchup where rhythm can be rebuilt. There's also a quiet storyline building around Curry's workload. The plan is to gradually increase his minutes, and that's where things can shift in a real way. 26 minutes gave flashes, but 30-plus changes the pressure on defenses entirely. You start seeing more traps, more double teams earlier in possessions, and that opens windows for everyone else. The question is whether the Warriors are ready to capitalize on those openings, because lately, those chances have been slipping away. Comment, Curry is still special if you believe he remains one of the most unique players in basketball. Another detail that can't be ignored is how Golden State handles late-game situations from here on out. The league has already adjusted to their tendencies. The high screen to force a switch, the quick relocation, the isolation when things slow down, teams are reading it. What separates good teams from dangerous ones is the ability to evolve under pressure. Right now, the Warriors are being pushed to show something new, something less predictable when everything is on the line. And internally, there's awareness of that. This isn't a team that lacks experience. These are players who have lived through deep playoff runs, who understand how small adjustments can swing entire series. But experience only helps if it translates into execution. The margin is thin now, and the room for error is almost gone. Right? Experience wins games. If you value what the veterans bring to this team, what makes this stretch even more intense is the standings pressure. Sitting around that play-in range means every result shifts positioning. One win can move you up, one loss can drop you into a tougher path. And when you look at possible opponents, there are no easy nights. Every team in that mix has something to prove, and Golden State is no longer being overlooked. They're being targeted. There's also growing attention around the supporting cast, not just scoring, but decision-making. When Steph gives up the ball, what happens next has to be sharp, immediate, and confident. Hesitation kills possessions at this level, especially against teams that rotate as quickly as Houston did. That's where the Warriors have to clean things up if they want to extend their season. If you've been following this team closely, you already feel it. This next stretch isn't just about making the play-in, it's about proving they belong beyond it. And the truth is, the story is shifting fast, and not everyone is catching the details as they happen. So if you want the real breakdowns, the inside angles, and everything that doesn't show up in the box score, this is the moment to lock in. Hit subscribe right now, because what's about to unfold over these next games is going to define the direction of this franchise, and you're going to want every update as it happens. Comment, "This story isn't finished yet," if you think the Warriors still have another chapter to write. There's something else building behind the scenes that hasn't fully exploded into the conversation yet. The Warriors are starting to understand that their margin isn't about talent anymore, it's about timing. When to push, when to slow down, when to trust the extra pass instead of forcing a shot. Those details decide games at this stage, and lately Golden State has been just a step late in too many of those moments. Against Houston, you could see possessions where the first action didn't work, and instead of flowing into the second option, everything stalled. That hesitation gave the defense time to recover, to reset, to close off angles that should have been open. That's not a roster issue. That's rhythm and trust. And those are things that can change quickly if the right pieces start clicking at the same time. Right, Golden State still has magic if you think this team can surprise the league again. Another factor that could quietly swing everything is health, not just Curry, but the entire rotation. There's a difference between being available and being ready. The Warriors need guys who can handle playoff-level intensity, not just fill minutes. That's why the next few games aren't just about wins, they're about building something reliable under pressure. If that foundation isn't there, no system will hold when things get tight. And while a lot of teams are running on fatigue right now, Golden State might actually benefit from where they are physically. Curry coming back with fresher legs, key players getting managed minutes, that could turn into an advantage if they reach the play-in with the right balance. But that only matters if they clean up the execution issues we've been seeing. Comment, "Champions never quit," if you believe the Warriors still have the heart of a champion. What's making this even more intriguing is how opponents are preparing for them. There's no underestimating anymore. Teams are studying every late-game tendency, every inbound play, every defensive switch. The Warriors are being challenged to stay unpredictable, and that's not easy when the stakes are this high. It forces creativity and, more importantly, confidence in players beyond Steph. Because at some point, someone else has to step into that moment. Not to replace Curry, but to give him space to operate. One extra shot falling, one smart read, one defensive stop. Those are the plays that flip outcomes now. And if Golden State finds that secondary edge, the entire tone around this team changes overnight. This is exactly why the next update matters more than it seems. There are adjustments coming, rotations shifting, and decisions being made that won't be obvious until they show up on the floor. If you want to stay ahead of all that, not just the results but the real reasons behind them, you need to be here before everyone else catches on. Subscribe now and don't miss what's coming next, because the Warriors are heading into a stretch where every move carries weight, and the smallest change could spark something much bigger than people expect. Right, I still believe in the Warriors. If you trust this team can make fans dream again. If you love following the Warriors and everything around Steph Curry, subscribe now because we cover every story about this team. And the truth is, the next game won't just show effort, it will show identity. Either this team locks into what it does best, or the season starts slipping through small cracks that turn into big problems fast. You can feel that something is close to clicking, but it hasn't fully happened yet. And in this league, timing is everything. Comment: Steph is living history. If you believe we are watching one of the greatest players ever, stay locked in here, because this is where the real story is being told, beyond the highlights and final scores. If you want sharp, honest breakdowns and the kind of insight that keeps you ahead of the conversation, subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next update could change everything.